Ramses III. He was the second pharaoh of the 20th dynasty in ancient Egypt. He is thought to have reigned from March 26, 1186 to April 15, 1155 BC and is considered to be the last great monarch of the New Kingdom to wield any substantial authority over Egypt. His long reign saw the decline of Egyptian political and economic power, linked to a series of invasions and internal economic problems that also plagued pharaohs before him. This coincided with a decline in the cultural sphere of ancient Egypt. However, his successful defense was able to slow down the decline, although it still meant that his successors would have a weaker military. He has also been described as a warrior pharaoh due to his strong military strategies. He led the way by defeating the invaders known as the Sea Peoples, who had caused destruction to other civilizations and empires. He was able to save Egypt from collapsing at a time when many other empires fell during the Late Bronze Age. Ramesses III constructed one of the largest mortuary temples of western Thebes, now called Medinet Habu. He was assassinated in the harem conspiracy led by his secondary wife Dia and her eldest son Penawere. This would ultimately cause a succession crisis which would further accelerate the decline of ancient Egypt. He was succeeded by his son Ramses IV, although many of his other sons would rule later. Discover, Medinet Habu and funerary temple built by Ramses III. Ramses III's magnificent memorial temple of Medinet Habu, fronted by sleepy Kamlola village and backed by the Theban mountains, is one of the West Bank's most underrated sites. This was one of the first places in Thebes closely associated with the local god Amun. At its height, Medinet Habu contained temples, storage rooms, workshops, administrative buildings, a royal palace, and accommodation for priests and officials. It was the center of the economic life of Thebes for centuries. Although the complex is most famous for the funerary temple built by Ramses III, Hatshepsut and Thutmose III also constructed buildings here. They were later added to and altered by a succession of rulers through to the Ptolemies. When the pagan cults were banned, it became an important Christian center and was still inhabited as late as the 9th century AD, when a plague was thought to have decimated the town. You can still see the mud brick remains of the medieval town that gave the site its name. Medina means town or city, on top of the enclosure walls. The original temple of Amun, built by Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, was later completely overshadowed by the enormous funerary temple of Ramses III, the dominant feature of Medinet Habu. But a chapel from the Hatshepsut period still stands on the right after you have passed the outer gates. Ramses III was inspired in the construction of his shrine by the Ramesses of his illustrious forebear, Ramses II. His own temple and the smaller one dedicated to Amun are both enclosed within the massive outer walls of the complex. Also just inside, to the left of the gate, are the tomb chapels of the divine adorers, which were built for the principal priestesses of Amun. Outside the eastern gate, one of only two entrances was a landing key for a canal that once connected Medinet Habu with the Nile. You enter the site through the unique Syrian gate, a large two-story building modeled after a Syrian fortress. As with the images of the pharaoh smiting his enemies, this harks back to the famous battles between Egyptians and Hittites, particularly at the time of Ramses II. If you follow the wall to the left, you will find a staircase leading to the upper floors. There is not much to see in the rooms, but you'll get some great views out across the village in front of the temple and over the fields to the south. The well-preserved first pylon marks the front of the temple proper. Ramses III is portrayed in its reliefs as the victor in several wars. Most famous are the fine reliefs of his victory over the Libyans, whom you can recognize by their long robes, sidelocks, and beards. There is also a gruesome scene of scribes tallying the number of enemies killed by counting severed hands and genitals. To the left of the first court are the remains of the pharaoh's palace. The 3 rooms at the rear were for the royal harem. There is a window between the first court and the pharaoh's palace known as the Window of Appearances, which allowed the pharaoh to show himself to his subjects. The reliefs of the second pylon feature Ramses III presenting prisoners of war to Amun and his vulture goddess wife, Mu. Colonnades and reliefs surround the second court, depicting various religious ceremonies. You will see the remains of an early Christian basilica as well as a small sacred lake. And, on the south side of the temple, the outline of the palace and the window, looking into the temple courtyard, where Ramses would appear.